Hello, welcome to Blurred Colors Art. This video was originally meant to be my Halloween video for 2022. I was feeling a little burnt out from my last project and have a shoulder injury that I'll be needing physical therapy for. Don't worry, I'm okay, but this helped me make the decision not to rush this custom doll for the sake of releasing for the holiday. I also really wanted to take my time and put more work into the clothing, something my last doll was kind of light on. It turns out I actually really like sewing, who knew? I recently found a Hujoo Freya doll on the secondhand market. I've been wanting one of these dolls for a while, but they're no longer in production. They're put together just like a regular ball jointed doll, but they're made of regular ABS plastic instead of resin. For their body proportions, they actually match the Hasbro princess dolls really well. Their legs are a good inch shorter, but the torsos are very close. So I did a little research and found that the Hasbro princesses can wear Blythe clothes. I found several free Blythe patterns by Stitch with Lily here on YouTube. I'll link their channel in the description box below. They do sew-along videos with English subtitles, and I found them very easy to follow along with. I took pieces from two of their dresses and combined them into the type of dress I wanted to make for my cat girl. The materials for this doll came from a Halloween craft kit that I bought from Carrion Creators 2 years ago. They're Aquarianists here on YouTube, but they also have an Etsy, Instagram, and are on the Stockbox 2 Discord. They gave me links to their store and social media that I have linked down below if you're looking for a similar kit. Lily Rain actually made this kit for me custom. The contents were a complete surprise, filled with different fabrics, beads, yarn, charms, chains, and resin bits they made. As soon as I got it in 2020, I immediately had ideas for multiple dolls that I could make with everything. But I really wanted to make a witch most of all. Sadly, that got pushed back for a long time as other projects took priority. Her skirt is made of multiple layers. This is from the Sweet Girl Dress pattern. I'm cutting out a dark purple fabric that feels like a decent quality satin. This will be placed under the sparkly spider web tulle fabric. Then the two will be sewn together so that the glittery spider web shows up clearly and is more sturdy. I cut the spiderweb fabric using the purple satin as a guide, but leaving enough room around it so I could fold the edges over. I repeat this for all 3 skirt pieces. Here's how it looks layered. I wanted to make her sleeves match, so I used the same combination of fabrics. Some of the strips of cotton that I liked were not quite long enough to be used for the main skirt, so I'll be sewing them together on the long edge to lengthen them. I used the same cotton for the bodice pieces. The cat print here ended up being mostly used for trim, as the collar, sleeve cuffs, and bottom ruffle. I mostly used Lily's vintage fall dress pattern for the collar and sleeves. It was fun to mix and match the pieces. I ran into a bit of a problem with the sleeves, however. I realized too late, but I accidentally printed the patterns at 90%. So the sleeves don't come close to fitting around the arms. To fix my mistake, I redrew the sleeve pattern and sized it up. I did the same for the cuffs, making them a bit longer. Sewing the glittery spider webs was pretty difficult the first time, and I felt like I wanted a different fabric for them anyway. So I redid them in this chiffon fabric. And I skipped the black lace trim. If you can, always check the fit for something before putting the entire outfit together, just in case there's an error. This looks much better and has room for the seam allowance. Now I attach the sleeves to the bodice, testing the fit once more, and measuring the back for the future closure. The sleeves fit the arms properly, but they are difficult to get on over the hands. I'll come up with a solution to that later. For now, it's time to continue with the skirt. At the last moment, I decided to split this piece in half to become the ruffle. Then I sewed all the skirt pieces together and sewed a gather stitch at the top. I pulled the thread until the edge is wide enough to go around the doll's waist. Then I pin the bodice, good side to the skirt. I start in the middle so that everything lines up evenly. Then I sew everything together off screen on my sewing machine. The back is closed with a snap closure, and a gap is left at the top of the skirt so it can slide easily over the hips. The waist felt a bit plain, so I took a scrap of the purple satin and cut a long rectangle to become a waistband. This gets hemmed at the top and bottom. The waist seam for the dress is already several layers thick, 3 I think, and I didn't want to stitch on a 4th. So I opted to use fabric glue to attach the waistband instead. It's just decorative anyway and won't have any pressure on it. So I don't really need to worry about it coming apart. I tucked the end of the band into the back of the dress to hide the rough edge. Here's how the finished dress looks. I wanted her to have a lot of layers, but didn't want to add bulk. So instead of leggings, like I originally planned, I made her some stretchy leg warmers instead. They were pretty simple. I just cut out 2 small rectangles that fit nicely around the calves, pinned them, marked the seam, and sewed them. The last sewn piece of her outfit will be a pair of bloomers. I got the pattern for these from ChellyWood, who makes patterns for all kinds of dolls. These are also free, and you can find a link to them below. The fabric for these came from an old pair of cotton shorts. It's nice and thin and works perfectly for doll clothes. I sewed these according to the video instructions and added some lace trim to the bottom. The bloomers have an elastic waist and are easy to put on and take off. Now all the pieces of the outfit are ready. Well, mine is her hat. But before I can jump into the face-up, I need to make her wig. I only have 1 doll of this type, and I want to get all the rough stuff that might scratch the paint out of the way first. I'm making this wig using the same method I did for my Dolliteful Bunny BJD. The wig cap is made using hot glue poured straight onto cling wrap. This gives me a firm but flexible base that I can work over the ears without causing damage. I also avoid putting any hot glue on her cat ears so they can poke through the hair. I have 2 colors of glue because there was still a bit of black glue stick left in my glue gun from making my 17-inch demon doll Dusk. After everything is nice and cool, I trim the wig cap down with scissors. As you can see, it slides cleanly over the ears and the inside of the cap is nice and smooth. For the fiber, I have this super soft, chunky rainbow yarn. I think the brand is Yarn Bee, but I lost the label a while ago, so I can't be sure. And just like always, I'm using the tug method to get the longest fibers of yarn. You just unravel the strands and pull at the ends to extract the fiber. I line them back up and do several more pulls to get everything even. Off camera, I make the yarn into wefts with Elmer's glue all. Then I use the same glue to attach the wefts to the head cap. I could have used hot glue for this, but I feel like I have more control when placing the wefts this way. Water-based glue does take much longer to dry, so I use pins to hold the weft in place until it's firm. This is another benefit of a hot glue wig cap for hard-headed dolls like BJDs. Usually you can pin right into the vinyl of a fashion doll's head when using fabric and PVA glue to make the cap. This isn't possible with ABS plastic or resin. Of course, you could just be more patient and wait for the glue to dry completely, but this is me. After several layers and a middle part, the wig is done being formed. I tried to angle the wefts in a way to keep the ears exposed while still hiding the glue. Overall, I'm really happy with how it turned out. The next step is to make her some inset eyes and attach her tail. To make this easier on myself, I removed her head temporarily. The tail has a hole for where a magnet can be placed, but there's no place for its sister on her bum. Her tail takes 6mm magnets. I was surprised by how strong these were. I marked the center and then traced the shape of the magnet with a pencil. Next, I set up my dust collector to reduce the plastic particles that make it into the air. But even with the dust collector, I make sure to wear a mask. Then I start carving the shape out. And like always, I slipped. Honestly, I shouldn't have used this bit. I picked it because it was the same size as the guide drawing, but I definitely recommend using a smaller bit than you need the hole to be. So now I need to repair the damage with epoxy sculpt. This kind of works out anyway, since I'll be able to embed the magnet into the clay and conceal it while keeping it secure. But I would have been just as happy to glue it in place. I smoothed the clay out and let it cure for several hours. While the clay hardens, I decided to make a tool for removing her hands. I curl a very sturdy wire into a hook shape and smoosh on a glob of leftover epoxy. This will give me something small enough to slip through the sleeve holes while keeping the arms from becoming unstrung. Now it's time to make her eyes. HarleysDollhouse sent me these bases when we did a previous collaboration, and they just happened to fit exactly. I wanted to try something new for the eyes, and considering our doll this time is a cat, I thought yellow scaleras would be perfect. I do 2 coats with acrylic paint, waiting for it to dry between layers. Next, I fill the irises with a coat of pastel green. I wanted to create a soft shadow from the outside of the circle that vanishes towards the center. I'm using a tiny applicator with soft pastels for this. I roughly drew in some slit pupils with pastels as well. I fill the eyes with a shallow layer of UV resin. Before I cure this layer, I sprinkle in the gold-colored glitter. I use a needle to spread the glitter out and to remove some so that the color underneath shows through. I cure this layer and fill in the iris with black acrylic paint. Then I add a white catch light to each eye with a dotting tool. I brace my pinky against the eye to stabilize my hands. After the paint is dry, I add another layer of resin to finish filling the pupils. I tap and poke the bubbles with a needle to pop them. I cure that layer and add a final coat. This covers the entire eye smoothly and finally adds a dome to the iris. hold a lighter close to the resin to finish popping any remaining bubbles. I'm not sure what would happen if you touch the resin with the flame, but I'm sure it isn't good, so be careful. After a final cure, the eyes are done. By now, the clay has cured, and I did a base coat of orange with my brightest color in stock. The color is not correct, but the magnet tail works nicely. Since my paint was not saturated enough, I tried mixing my own orange, and the results were terrible. It took a special run to the store, but I got the brightest orange paint they had, a neon black light color. This was much closer to the original body color, but it wasn't very opaque. I think it took 7 layers before I was satisfied. It started getting a brush stroke texture, so I switched to a makeup sponge for a smoother application. After it dried, it kind of looked like she got a spanking. But I can fix that when I paint the rest of the body. After an initial layer of Mr. Super Clear, I'm ready to start blocking in some fur patterns with gouache paint. I have a picture of a real orange cat that I'm referencing while I work. For now, I'm just focusing on the white underbelly colors. I'll be going over these white sections later with yellow pastels, both to blend them into the orange and to give her fur fantasy undertones. I also feel like the white against the orange is too high contrast, but it is a good base to work on top of. I try to remember to work on the tail with each step so that everything is consistent. The cat in my reference had darker markings that mostly came up to the edge of the lighter ones. So I'm painting these in with a nice umber tone, paying particular care to the face. The clothes will cover up most of the body and hide the paint, but I like knowing it's there. It's unlikely that I'll be displaying her nude at all, but I'm currently undecided on if I'll be selling her. And if I do, her future owner may want to change up her clothing or show off her fur. I noticed that a lot of BJD artists don't bother painting the head cap. I think this goes back to it not being visible and not being worth the effort. But there may be chipping and scratching issues that I'm not aware of. So far I've only tackled animal BJD characters, and painting the head cap has felt necessary so far. Adding in the blushing over the paint is my favorite step. I love how it softens the edges and makes everything feel more polished and complete. She won't be wearing any kind of shoes, so I made sure to give her paws the same treatment. After I finished adding the yellow pastels, I went over the brown paint with a deep brown pastel as well. And I blushed in some soft pink color for her mouth, nose, and tear ducts. I almost forgot her tail again. After I'm done painting, I give the doll a final coat of MSC, and once she's dry, begin applying the eyelashes. I decided to use Elmer's glue all for the adhesive this time, and I wish I hadn't. This was the most difficult lash application that I've ever done. The doll's inside lid is thin, and there wasn't much to actually stick the lash to, and it just kept wanting to fall off. As you can see, one eye has much shorter lashes than the other. But it finally stayed in place, so I went with it. And finally, I can gloss her nose and mouth. I'm using Sculpey Gloss Glaze here. It's the only gloss I found that doesn't crack as it dries. You still have to work in thin layers, though. I made a last-minute decision to gloss her eyelids and waterline. Time to dress her up! By now, the clay on the tool I made has fully dried, and I can test out how well it works for removing her hands. I was nervous here because if it failed, she would have become partially unstrung. But it held the elastic in place pretty well, and slid smoothly through the sleeves. I think I'll be using this hook a lot in the future when dressing my ball jointed dolls. So far, I only have one that has magnetic hands, and I've just designed clothes that have sleeves that fit over the hands easily. I thought about also doing buttons on cuffs that actually open and close like human clothes, but that is a lot more work. It was so fun to finally put her together. Up to this point, I'm always kind of guessing if things will actually work well together, or if I'll need to make changes. But I'm really pleased with how she came to life. And I was so excited to get to see her hair in combination with her new face. Now to style it. So these are tweezers that I found in the house junk drawer. I hear they're actually for working on computers, but they made the best curls I've ever done, so now they have a new purpose. These clamp down on their own, so wrapping the hair is fairly easy. I've struggled with using round metal devices because I had to grip the hair at the bottom while rotating the tool. Having the option of getting my hand out of the way while using my flat iron is also pretty nice. They're called cross-lock tweezers, and I definitely recommend them for curling yarn hair. To release the hair, I slightly untwist the curl and then give the handle a squeeze to open the clamp. To keep the hairstyle full, I twist the curls in opposite directions so that they alternate. I do all the hair this way, then begin to work on splitting the curls into two. I use the narrow end of a comb to split them, starting at the top and working them apart carefully. This results in more baby doll looking ringlets that are fuller instead of tapered at the bottom. I give the ends of the hair a trim off camera. Now all that's left is to make her accessories. I start by roughly patterning out a hat on tissue paper. Then I trace it onto craft foam to make the base. I have a wide brim with holes for her cat ears and a long pointed cone. And then I cut the pieces out. Don't worry about any creases in the foam from storage or folding for cuts. This will all get ironed out. The most simple way I've found to heat craft foam is with a hair straightener. This heats both sides evenly, and you can apply pressure to iron out those creases. With it warmed sufficiently, I hold the foam over the doll's head so that it cools in the proper shape. This takes a few passes before it's quite how I want it. For the cone, I first focus on getting it to stay in a rolled position. Once it kind of stays on its own, I glue the seam with super glue. After it's dry, I start working on warping and wrinkling the cone so that it looks more like fabric. I squished and held it in my hand to cool a few times. Then I attached the cone to the brim of the hat, sliding it up through the bottom and gluing it in place. Of course, this looks a bit messy, and I want to make it match the rest of her outfit. Using Fabri-tac, I glue the spiderweb tool on the bottom of the brim. These were narrow pieces, so I worked in 2 sections. The tool is glued down to the bottom, then folded over the top and glued again. I used my fingers to stick it down and got covered in glittery glue. I cut the excess off so that I have a clean edge for the inside seam. The fabric gets glued down into the cone of the hat so that it mostly is hidden from view. Then I glue down the edges where the next piece will line up. Here's how it looks with both pieces glued in place. The pattern of the spiderweb helps hide any seams and mistakes. Next, I run a green ribbon from the top of the cone and down the brim of the hat in a spiral pattern. I glued this ribbon on with Fabri-tac, but use Elmer's glue all for the next ribbon. I always kind of forget that Fabri-tac doesn't dry clear, or rather, I hope that I do a neater job next time. I added a spiderweb ribbon around the edge and glued 2 black ribbons to the inside of the cone. You can see all the funky glue mess here. These black ribbons will be used to tie the hat under our kitty witch's chin. I decided that the hat needed more decoration, and that since there was already glitter in her design, that more glitter would be a good idea. I paint the plain foam sections of the top with Elmer's glue, and then sprinkle a mix of black and blue glitter into it. I do my best to avoid gluing the ribbon and keep everything neat. Dropping the glitter into the glue one color at a time instead of pre-mixing the colors gave it a lovely galaxy effect. I worked in small sections so that the glue was still nice and wet as I added the glitter, and only a little bit flaked off when I brushed it after it was dry. I want to add a few trinkets to her, and the charms, resin objects, and beads that I received should be perfect. This little bell was included in the bag, and being a cat witch, I thought it was just right that it went on the end of her hat. I just stitch it in place, sewing straight through the foam. There are a few little resin stars that I liked that I glued to her hat. Honestly, I should have used Fabri-tac here instead of Elmer's glue. The larger star was so heavy that it kept slipping down while the glue dried. I really wanted her to have some kind of belt with potions dangling from it. So let's see what I have here that I can make it out of. I settled on this embroidery thread for the belt. I tied one end off so that I could braid the colors together. There are 2 brown and 1 green thread. Looking back now, I wish I had included an orange color to the belt, but I wanted to stick to colors that were found in nature for the loop. There was this tiny metal charm with 2 skulls at either end of a circle that I chose to use for the belt buckle. After finishing braiding the thread, I tie each end into the loops of the charm. This gets tied onto the doll and was surprisingly fiddly. Thankfully, it's loose enough to wiggle down if I wanted to remove it. If I can avoid having to tie this again in the future, I will. There was also a tiny brown bottle that I want to make into one of the potions hanging from her belt. I chose a few more cute little charms to hang from it as well, like little potion making tools. From the bag of stone beads, I made her a magical amulet. I tied this with the same brown embroidery thread as the belt. And I filled the little brown bottle with the blue and black glitter, so it looks like stardust up close. I have a pack of clear glass bottles that I'll be using to make her another potion with. I think these are adorable, and I wish I had more reasons to use them. My sister recently gifted me these resin pigments, and I think a potion is a good test for them. I picked the fluorescent orange color, and I filled the bottle partially with clear UV resin, then add a few drops of the pigment into it. I had wanted the resin to be somewhat transparent, and this was way too much pigment for this tiny amount of resin. Since the color ended up being so opaque, I figured I'd lean into it and add some purple. I swirl this around a bit with a toothpick, but didn't mix it completely. I want the colors to stay mostly separate. Then I cure the resin with my UV flashlight. The last thing to make for her is a broom. I had this old paintbrush that I ruined when I learned that washing super glue off with water didn't work. And I think the top is caked with hot glue. So instead of going outside and grabbing a stick, I thought it would be fun to turn this old brush into her broom handle. I cover the rough end with hot glue, smoothing it out with the nozzle while it's hot. Then I continue applying the glue down the brush handle to add a bark-like texture. I grabbed one of the little plastic bat beads that came in the kit and stuck him on top of the handle. I trimmed some dried grass that I've kept on hand for like 2 years, waiting for it to become a broom, and glued it over the funky bristles. I want to mostly cover the metal piece of the brush with the grass. I work in layers, adding the grass a little at a time because I don't want to have any bits of hot glue showing through. I'm satisfied after it's thick enough to completely hide the old brush bristles. I give the ends a trim so it's nice and blunt. I want her broom to match the colors of the rest of the design so far. So I give the handle a base coat in black acrylic paint. I go in with brown paint and blend it into the black while it's still wet. As I get closer to the end of the bristles, I add more brown to create a gradient. I tie a piece of twine around the top of the grass as a decorative binding. I let the paint dry for a few hours, then went in and painted the bat's eyes yellow off camera. Before we can call the broom done, we need to decorate it to match the rest of the doll. I want to add 2 strings of beads hanging from the binding of the broom. My son helped pick out the beads we used and wanted to help thread them. He was really fascinated with the bumpy glass beads. Other than being a cute charm, I thought the beads made sense as a counterweight for helping keep the broom steady, a lot like the tail of a kite does. When I'm done, I tie the thread around the last bead to keep everything nice and secure. I feel like all the parts of this doll are my favorite part, but playing with the broom is really fun. To tie the colors together, I wrap the handle in a purple ribbon. And I top it off with a simple bow held together by hot glue. With the broom finished, my witchy cat girl is done. This doll has been on my to-do list for a while, and it was really nice to just put other projects to the side and take my time putting in all the details that I wanted. I'm really proud of how cohesive her design is, even though I didn't start with any concept sketches this time. This custom just kind of took on a life of its own and led the way. What do you think of her? I think she's very sweet and innocent looking. So I decided to name her Taffy. With her bright candy colors and her orange tabby cat markings, I think it suits her. I hope you enjoyed this video, even though it was a bit long, and I'll see you next time.